Hi friends. I don't actually know which week or what part of the coaching I'm going to put this little bit of teaching in, but I wanted to fit it in here someplace, somehow. Because as I continue on my own food freedom journey, I am always looking for help, but I'm always looking for wisdom. And I believe it's also my job to bring that wisdom to you. So what I've been learning in my own journey lately is about mental restriction. And I'm even kind of going back and forth about with boundaries and stuff like that here. When we come up against diet culture, when diet culture kind of comes up against our freedom, the biggest part that is going to kind of come up against our freedom is going to be mental restriction. So when we start diet plans or diet programs, what it is really geared towards is a type of restriction. We restrict calories, we restrict carbs, we restrict food that isn't quote unquote clean. We restrict an entire macronutrient. Maybe we restrict all refined sugar. Maybe we restrict all sugar in general, including fruit. Whatever the quote unquote magic pill or magic restriction is, it can work for a little bit when we make those, 1 to 2 to 3 weeks worth of changes where we're restricting this thing. But then what happens is our mental capacity catches up with it. And the reason that I bring the word sustainable into this space is because I personally don't want to live in a place of mental restriction. I don't want to live in a place where I can't have birthday cake at a birthday party, where I can't have this, that, or the other thing. Because what I found is that when I tell myself I cannot have it, it actually makes me want to have it more. And what will happen is, especially in my circumstance, is let's just say that after lunch one day, or, honestly, most days after lunch, I want to have something sweet. And I think it's a blood sugar thing. So I'm kind of always like going for the chocolate or something like that, right? What if one day, and this has happened many times, instead of telling myself, no, you can't have that. What if it's, 1 or 2 Oreos or a piece of dark chocolate or, I don't know, whatever your little quote unquote guilty pleasure is, right? And let's really not call it a guilty pleasure anymore. What if we called it joy food? What if we called it something that just kind of fills our soul and reminds us that we're human and we're not robots and we're not machines and we're not just on this earth to lose weight or to have pretty bodies, right? Because that's really not our job. So what happened in my life is that if I would tell myself, absolutely not, I cannot have those 2 or 3 Oreos, I cannot have that piece of dark chocolate. I know how to fight cravings. I know how to sit in the resistance. I know how to ask myself all of the questions of, why do I want this? Was my meal not satisfying enough? Do I need more protein? Am I low on carbohydrates? I know how to kind of go into that type of mentality and ask myself the questions. But what if I just let myself have the 2 to 3 Oreos and called it a day? Sometimes what will happen is our brains will come up against us and say, well, you broke a food rule. You may as well break all the food rules. But guess what? There's no food rules here in food freedom. You might have a boundary, which we're going to be getting to. But eating an Oreo is not life or death. It's not going to send you to hell. It does not classify you as good or bad because it in of itself is not good or bad. Food is neutral, right? So what if you just ate the 2 to 3 Oreos on the back end of your meal? You felt satisfied. You got the little dopamine hit that you wanted, and you went on with your day. You ate a healthy dinner. You had no craving after dinner, and you went to bed. Would you call that a successful day? Would you call that a binge-free day? I would. I would say that I honored my hunger and satiety cues, but I also made sure that I wasn't operating in mental restriction. Because when we operate in mental restriction, which says I cannot have that is off limits for me, a lot of times we will rebound even harder, and even higher. So rather than having the 2 to 3 Oreos, what we will do is have the entire sleeve or the entire box. And then sometimes just that trigger will send us into a full-blown binge, which for you just might be the sleeve of Oreos. For me, my binges look different. So I'm coming into a season of saying yes. And I talked about this on my podcast on episode 147, which I just recorded. And I got really real in that podcast about the last 6 weeks of my struggle. But there was something else that happened to me the day after I recorded that podcast. But before I go into that bit of information, I want you to start telling yourself yes. Yes, I can have those Oreos. Yes, I can have that piece of dark chocolate. Yes, I can have the bun on my burger. But also, yes, since I had the bun on my burger, I can have a side salad. Or if you're a person that gets a bunless burger and doesn't get the fries and gets a side salad, maybe give yourself a yes for the fries. The whole point of this entire thing is food freedom. And I don't want to live the rest of my life not having a piece of birthday cake to be quote unquote good or bad. I don't want to live the rest of my life without enjoying my mother's chocolate chip cookies. I don't want to live the rest of my life fearing holidays, fearing losing control, and feeling like I'm missing out when I go out with my friends or family. When we start to tell ourselves yes, especially when it comes to the things that we've mentally restricted, what we will find is that our brains have made this thing so much bigger than it actually is. There's some part of our brains that it says, I need this, I have to have this, this is the answer to the thing right now. And once we get it, we find it does not satisfy, right? But that's a learned thing. And sometimes we have to go into those places and into those spaces of uncomfortability. Can I have these 2 to 3 Oreos after my lunch without sending me into a binge? I believe that you can. I believe that you can also tell yourself no. But what if you told yourself yes? And maybe the only thing that is standing in the way of you and your food freedom is mental restriction. This idea is not in the book. It has not been talked about on any of the freedom calls. It is not in the coaching, and that's why I'm recording something for you today. But I really want you to press into this mental restriction as you're kind of going about everything else, and give yourself permission to say yes.